Elevate your happy hour at the Library of Congress, which is open late on Thursdays for Live at the Library. Enjoy cocktails in the iconic Thomas Jefferson Building alongside live music, author talks, exhibits, and more. It's all free, eclectic, and inspired by the library's collections. On deck for August are outdoor film screenings, a K-pop night, and folk concert with Amanda Pascali. Plan your next night out at loc.gov/live. Today on CityCast DC, the very likely next mayor of DC wants to make buses free for public assistance recipients. If that sounds familiar, it should. Over the last few years, there's been a bunch of proposals to make buses free for some and sometimes all Washingtonians. Zara Norman from NOTUS has been reporting on this, and she is here to explain. Today is Wednesday, August 5th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, Zara, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So one of Janice Lewis George's campaign promises was to make buses free.
Yes, free to those on SNAP assistance.
Okay, so not free like free to everybody, but to enable free rides for people on public assistance. Is there a likelihood that's going to happen?
I mean, she certainly thinks so, and so does Charles Allen, council member and chair of the Transportation Committee. And they think that because already the Metro bus is 50% off for those on SNAP assistance. So the idea is that if they could find a little revenue, which Lewis George feels like she can do by trimming existing agencies, that it would be a realistic target. But obviously we're in a really tight fiscal environment, so kind of remains to be seen.
Wait, how much did they think it would cost?
They did not actually tell me. They just kind of said that they think they can raise the revenue, and administratively they could probably administer those funds easier because they already have that 50% off.
So how does it work now? Like if you were on SNAP assistance and you want to take advantage of this benefit, what do you do?
Yeah, so it's the Metro Lift program. There's a website online. You need like a Smart Trip card, you need your EBT card, and then you enroll online. You get this 50% off benefit. But the idea is that transit is fully subsidized for other groups of people, and that if you're receiving SNAP, that's probably a demographic of people who could do with the extra help.
We're at a moment when one of the real challenges facing the metro system is that no one's paying their fare. Like 70% of people get on the bus without paying. It drives me nuts when I see it, just because I feel like I'm a sucker. I paid. This is obviously a different thing, because if you are getting the free ride, you're still supposed to touch your card to the reader because someone is paying for it. It's just not you. Is that right?
No, exactly. And so WMATA tracks ridership. They also track, as you said, like how many of those rides are paid. And when we looked for the last month that was available in May, it was like 10.4 million people rode the Metro in that month, and only 1 in 4 of them paid for it.
For the Metro bus.
Yeah. Metro bus, sorry. Yeah, they also track the rail, but we didn't look at that one. In the last month, in June, that they just released, it is a bit closer. I think it was 1 in 3. But still, I mean, that's a serious problem when, they're trying to fund transit. And so some people are just kind of like, if only 1 in 4 people are paying for it, like maybe we could write that off. Maybe we could find other ways to kind of make up for that revenue, because the Metro bus is only 10% of WMATA's passenger revenue. So there is a group of people who are calling for those funds to be written off entirely, and then if not written off entirely, at least giving some of a benefit or giving a break to people who receive assistance.
So this has been a thing in DC for a while. A few years ago, there was a proposal in the DC Council to make Metro buses free within the district's limits, because that's obviously the only place they can legislate for.
Right, yeah.
They would have, effectively that meant that the DC taxpayers would have transferred some money to WMATA to subsidize that. Why didn't that wind up happening?
Yeah, so it kind of didn't end up happening because of the very nature of the DMV region. And so WMATA, it's not just DC, right? It's Virginia and Maryland also have a stake. And so apparently Councilmember Allen told me that it was the other states that kind of nixed the idea. They didn't want just the district residents having that free transit benefit. I'm not sure, he didn't really evaluate on whether that's because they didn't want their own constituents kind of barking at them to also make it free, but for whatever reason in 2022 when that was passed, and other good things did happen as a result of that bill. Like we have 24-hour bus service now, but yeah, that free transit benefit didn't end up passing because of Virginia and because of Maryland.
But in some of the suburbs, where they have these smaller bus systems of their own, some of those are now free, like in Alexandria, right?
Yeah, so they went fare free for COVID. And what they found during COVID was that actually when they made the bus free, and DC also did this, right? They went fare free for a bit during COVID, but they saw that ridership went way up, and they saw that they were actually able to get people on and off the bus a lot quicker. So it kind of increased like its reliability, its frequency, and that was actually kind of saving them money. So they just kind of took a gamble. They also got some state funding, right, which DC wouldn't be able to have, not a state. So that benefited them. And also that's how Baltimore was kind of able to do it, through some state funding too. They say that it's actually not as big a cost because they've been able to kind of get more buses out there and get much higher ridership than they would have otherwise.
Wait, how does that make it not a cost? Or are you just saying it has more of an upside?
I think it just has more of an upside. And then they also kind of said that there's like other benefits, like reducing congestion, like obviously their climate goals. They feel like they're further along. So they just kind of see it as like a public good and something that was worth kind of writing off. And they think the bus system is better for it.
When we had Randy Clark, the GM of Metro, on the pod, and I was asking him about the non-payment, he said one of the things that's changed sort of in the culture is that because some bus systems are free and others are paid, there's ignorance out there, maybe willful ignorance, about whether to pay or not. And so this has sort of changed you don't just assume that every bus in the world has a fare required.
Yeah, and I think also it might have confused folks, like when it was fare free for a bit during COVID, like maybe some folks just thought, oh, it's fare free now, and they kind of kept going with that, or they didn't feel like it was as necessary. But buses do, I don't know, every time I got on the bus, I hear the voice saying, the fare is $2.25. And now WMATA is, asking bus drivers to start to quote the fare again at people to remind them of that.
So what does WMATA think of this idea of free fares for SNAP recipients? I mean, it technically doesn't take any money out of their pocket because it's just DC taxpayers putting money on these folks' fare cards.
Right. Yeah. No, they didn't answer my specific question on that, but they have more generally just said that fares are really important. In general, they've kind of pushed back anytime kind of fare-free proposals have been made, just because they say they lose something like $50 million annually in fare evasion, and that they really rely on that to keep their services up. So they didn't speak to the SNAP piece specifically, but I would imagine like maybe something similar to what they've said about writing off the fare in the past.
Well, the knock on free buses, sort of wherever they are proposed, is that, it may be great at first, but in the long run, it will lead to less money for the bus operator and therefore buses that don't come, which is counter to the point of public transit. Is that knock accurate based on, you mentioned Baltimore has done it, based on other cities? Is that a correct criticism?
I think we might be too soon to some of these systems going fare free to see that, but we are 5 years in too. Like Alexandria is like the one I looked at in particular. I mean, their ridership keeps ticking up. Like I think they hit a record of something, I think almost 6 million last year. And so they at least don't see that happening yet. But yeah, it might be something that we'd have to keep an eye on further down the line.
And then there's this other thing, which is sort of amorphous, but there's a theory that a thing you get for free, you as a human being and, a resident of a capitalist society, if you get a thing for free, you are going to treat it as less valuable than if you have to pay for it. And therefore, you're more likely to trash your bus misbehave or whatever. I don't know if that's true or anything, but is there, I imagine things like that factor into the calculations of people who run big systems.
Yeah, I would imagine it would too. I think definitely like when you pay for something, maybe you think, I invested something in this, even if it's something as quick as a bus ride. But a driver I spoke to in Alexandria said that he felt like people were better behaved on the free bus. He felt like people were more appreciative, or like they weren't. He said a lot of the time when people get on the bus and they're quoted the fare and they don't have the money, or they don't want to pay, they can get agitated and confrontational. And he just felt like it was almost a better vibe on the bus. Like everyone was kind of like appreciative. They were using like this public good. So he thought it was it was different. But yeah, that doesn't kind of speak to like whether people leave trash or
Right.
people kind of are more like disrespectful in other ways.
No, but his theory of the case was that getting rid of the fares takes away a major point of tension.
Yeah, and people have said that in DC too. Bus rider assault's it's a pretty big issue here. I think there was like 194 last year.
And the union was furious when the Metro leadership started asking the bus drivers to simply quote fares at people, to say that'll be $2.25.
And they say that's enough for some people to get agitated. The bus driver I spoke to, his theory is kind of it just like embarrasses people. But yeah, something as simple as quoting the fare has been shown to have, or at least just introduce an element of tension where when you're fare free or when you're not quoting the bus, it puts bus drivers in the middle of like between the system and the payer in a way that they didn't sign up for. They just want to drive the bus. So yeah, they're definitely, the union is not happy about being thrown in the middle of that and being kind of made to be the enforcement angle of a problem that's really far beyond them.
I have a bit of good news to share from our sponsors at the DC Department of Behavioral Health. And that is that DC is turning a corner, and the numbers back it up. Fatal opioid overdose dropped 33% in this city from 2023 to 2024. Now, that is not just data. That's real people and real families that are still together. But listen, the work isn't done, and neither are we. If you or someone that you love is struggling, help is closer than you think. Text Live Long DC to 888-811 to connect with treatment, housing, and recovery support right here in the district. Free Narcan is available at nearly 40 locations across DC because nobody should lose someone for lack of access. And if you're in crisis right now, call or text 988. Know your worth, know your alternatives, know your value, know yourself. Recovery is possible. Find out how at knowyourpathdc.com.
So in your reporting, you mentioned a couple other ideas, like every DC resident gets a fare card with a certain amount of value paid for by their taxes. What's the state of that, or what happened to that idea?
Yeah, so that was the idea that Charles Allen had in 2022. And I spoke to Gigi Wash, and they thought that was a really solid idea, just because it, is a preloaded amount, and they get to tap. You still get the tapping, the ridership card, kind of operates like a transit benefit, the way that a lot of people already have a transit benefit, like through school, through a lot of high paid jobs. So Alan's point was that kind of our transit system is backwards, and we need to find out a way to kind of give the expenses that some people enjoy on that card to more people.
So meaning that like me, a professional person, can get his company to like take my money out before I pay taxes on it and then put it on my card so I get a little benefit, or maybe some companies like, well, actually just put money on your card free. But in both cases, that's not a thing that a fast food worker is going to have.
Right. Yeah. So that's not something that exactly. It's at these kind of high paid jobs usually that you get those kinds of benefits conferred. And then, yeah, someone who works at a fast food company is not going to have access to that.
So as far as JLG's proposal of free buses for SNAP recipients, that obviously has to pass the council. There's a dollar value that will be attached to it. We've just come through a bruising budget process where the consensus is there's not enough dollars to go around, and so maybe we're going to have to raise taxes or something. Does she or her camp or her ally, Charles Allen, who chairs the Transportation Committee, do they believe the votes are there now to enact this?
They feel pretty optimistic about it. They said not to expect anything, obviously, until next year, even by way of a proposal or like this kind of being debated in the council. But yeah, I think they think at least starting with SNAP, they think that's a pretty like easy thing to come around, especially seeing as we already give 50% off to SNAP recipients. But JLG didn't rule out expanding, she called the universe of people who receive that benefit. It seems like she might want to kind of start with SNAP and that not necessarily be where we end that conversation. There's always been the political will. I mean, we've seen this introduced in the past. We've seen this like idea come up a lot in suburbs, as you said, in other cities. This is a conversation we keep coming back to for a reason. People want the bus to work better and preferably for free.
On the other hand, you could imagine the knock on this, that the city is spending beyond its means. It is, in a very tough spot, that it runs the risk of reactivation of the control board. And now they want to suddenly make buses free. And look at these people trying to do magic. Are they ready for that kind of politics?
I think it might be tough to kind of, as we're still kind of plugging holes, to introduce something that then, has to raise additional revenue. It might be that this is something that falls to the wayside as, we've seen that tax bill come in, Congress wants control of what the council's doing. So it might be that it's not a great moment to introduce something, but, this is a progressive mayor we presumably have coming in and a lot of progressive allies. And it could be that it's something we still see proposed.
Zara, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.